Hey there, welcome to the very first episode of Prescribing Growth, the series where we talk to the top business minds in auto reconditioning about what it takes to grow a successful company. My name's Matt McAllister. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Mobile Tech RX, and for our first episode, we've got a treat for you. We've got Rennie Doyle, the detailing extraordinaire, Air Force One, PNS, the Double Black Collection, detailing success. I mean, what are you not doing?
Yeah. Detail Mafia.
Detail Mafia as well. I mean, there's too much for us to list here, but we are so excited not only to chat with you about what you've learned, about how you've grown multiple companies in multiple different ways, but also this is such a strong connection as we look to get into the detailing space to figure out how we can help detailers grow their businesses in small ways.
Well, Matt, thank you. I'm humbled. You know, it's been a long journey, and it's been it's Carroll Shelby. I got to meet, Shelby Motor Cars, right? And he said it best. I met him when he's about 80 years old. And I was getting to an age where I was a little worried about my career. And he says, son, how old are you? And I said, I'm 39. And he says, son, you're still not there. And he said, you won't even get smart until you're 50. And I was blown away because you know what? I mean, I think I was a pretty smart young business guy, right? But he was right.
So we all know the Rennie Doyle of today.
Right.
And this series is all about how do you take something from nothing and make it something. Where did you start? What was the nothing?
Well, I'll tell you, mine was truly that. I mean, going into it, I never knew my father. And I was born in Colton, California, which is in Southern California. And we didn't have much. Always knew I was loved. My mom and grandma, I've come from a Italian heritage, and we had a house full of love, but there wasn't a whole lot more. So no car, still I recently lost my mom. Sorry. You know what? It was a great journey, and she's part of the reason I'm here, is she laid the foundation that you never give up, and she believed in me when nobody else did. And that passion that she and my grandmother showed me taught me that, you know what, you're born an underdog, but there's greatness in you if you want it. And all of us are maybe not born as quite unfortunate as I was, but a lot of people weren't fortunate to have the love and support I did. So we all have a struggle, we all have a struggle. Just get through it, just get through it. So, I started detailing as I was addicted to planes and helicopters and cars and go-karts and big wheels and bicycles and, anything that we could get our hands on that would move. And so I ended up at a local airport, and this guy was a pilot. He put me to work cleaning airplanes. And then a couple weeks later, I had to go give my notice because I found out my mom and grandma were on food stamps. And my grandma was an amazing woman. I didn't want her taking those food stamps and handing them to a person. So I went back. Gentleman's name was Art Scholl, legendary pilot. I told Art that I couldn't come back anymore. I had to go get a job. And he says, listen, you've done so good that I'm going to continue to teach you to fly, and we're going to pay you to do the work on the airplanes. We want you here.
Your start was in the flying side.
It was the flying side. Yeah, it was the flying side. And ironically, Art Scholl was the pilot that did a lot of the air-to-air combat and filming for Top Gun. And when Goose went into the flat span and Goose ends up dying, right, with Maverick, my mentor, the guy that got me going, he actually died filming that segment. A lot of people don't realize that. He went into a flat spin to refilm it after it was originally filmed, and had something go wrong with the airplane. He went into the Pacific Ocean and was killed. So at a young age, I lost somebody really important to me that kind of gave me my foundation. But again, you look at, not having a father, being raised in a tough area, being raised around a fair amount of, my brothers had addiction problems. I just lifted myself above that. I said, listen, I can't go down this road, man. At 7 years old, I started my whole world was coming apart. And, I was a special needs kid. I had a learning disability. I mean, everything was just against me. But that original foundation with my mom and grandma was don't stop. Don't care what other people think about you. You know your own value. You've got to develop your own value. You haven't been born with a silver spoon, and you're going to have to go out and create yourself.
You got a master's, right?
Got a master's.
What was the inspiration from that background to go get that level of education?
You know, my kids, I got 4 great kids, and my oldest daughter all of them inspire me. My oldest daughter's just hardcore. She's just a different level, and she was serving in the United States Marine Corps, and I didn't have a degree, and I'd gone to college, and just business called me out. You know, I just couldn't. Honestly, I was sitting there listening to professors that I'd already sold my first detailing company. You know, I was 19 years old, and sold a company for $96,000. And they're sitting there talking they were really good at knowing the book stuff, but the practicality of what they're teaching was, to be honest, bullshit.
You did it in real life.
Yeah. And so I got an attitude. Instead of just, we were talking off camera of, school's got the ability to teach you to learn. And so when my oldest daughter went in the Marine Corps, I told her I expected her to come out and go on to college. And so I said, here I am telling her to finish her degree up, and I don't have mine. Mm-hmm. So I went back and finished my bachelor's at 47 years old.
Wow. And
then I went back and finished my master's at 53 years old.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So, and you know, my wife and I are both part of the Guard in California, and it's free education. You know, I mean, it's not free. We pay for it, you know, through our efforts and our volunteerism and everything else. But now I'm addicted to learning. I always have been.
How many people in the industry do you think have that kind of passion for learning?
I think a lot have it. I think a lot want it, but I don't think a lot act on it.
So let's go back. One thing we talked about quickly, but I think that a lot of people watching this episode might be really interested in. You said you were 18 or 19 and sold a detailing company for $96,000.
$96,000.
I mean, most people would love to do that in their 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
What made you capable of having that kind of success that early?
You know, I'll tell you, okay, so we're talking about something that I think on this program is revolutionary, and that's software. Mm-hmm. I had the sense, and I had the guidance, and I had the mentorship, and I had the training, and I was willing to listen to other people. Because I had a learning disability, I learned very quickly I had to shut up and listen to instructions very closely. And what happened was I wrote everything down. And the value in a company is what you retain.
What do you think set you apart as a teenager? Was it your customer service? Was it just your communication skills? What was the foundation?
Passion. Dude, I love people. I wanted to do better for people. I've never been the cheap guy. Never. Matter of fact, I was the most expensive guy. You're going to pay for quality, because I always try to strive with education to know what I was doing was truly, I wasn't just learning it on my own. I wanted somebody else that was better than me to verify that I was good at what I did. And so, for instance, Mike Phillips, giant in the industry, right? Back 20 years ago, I was going to his classes that he'd hold down in Irvine at McGuire's. And it was for validation. It was because this guy's another guy that's been in as long as I have, but who says you're good? You know, I mean, our customers do, but do they really know? I wanted a professional to tell me, hey, you know what, you're that good. And so I think that getting out of your comfort zone, don't listen to other people. Most people want you to fail anyway. You got to track everything. The value of going back to 96,000 is I could go back for 3 years and give them a ledger and say, here's all the income I brought in. Everything was tracked, every single
record,
penny.
Every documentation.
Everything.
Wow.
Their phone numbers, back then we didn't have emails, we had phone numbers, that's it. We didn't have cell numbers.
That was your database.
That was it, and we had mailing addresses. The other thing is that what I love about this is in the revolution that's happening in the software industry for the auto care industry is kind of what coatings have done, is that coatings changed the way that detailers work and live. It's allowed people that rented houses to buy houses. Listen, if you track what your company is doing, it brings more value. There's got to be an end game. So now you're coming into a time frame to where you're already, you can increase your value and your income off of simply what you have already. You don't need to sell anymore. You need to manage what you've got better. Does that make sense?
I love that. That's great.
It is, because it comes down to, it's just solid business principles.
I think the industry has focused so much, and this isn't necessarily the wrong thing to focus on, but we focused on customer acquisition for so long.
Right.
But what that's forced most people to do, that if you're only focused on customer acquisition, many people are just decreasing price to win the customer that walks in the door, instead of the long-term view, which is how do I establish a value that capitalizes on the customers I currently have.
Absolutely.
And that's not just detailing, that's every business in the world.
I love to use Chick-fil-A. You look at Chris, my right-hand dude, man, my business manager, he's, my life on the business side of things. We're talking about how quickly in Los Angeles, Chick-fil-A is capitalizing on that market and growing, while McDonald's is shrinking. Why? Customer service, they manage what they have, they know what they are.
And they're what, 3 times more expensive?
It's a culture. And I think that's something that we desperately need within the automotive services business, is for people to realize you've got to have a culture within your business. Stop hiring people for the lowest price you can. Stop looking at price points. Your whole worth, what's your education?
Mm-hmm. I think it's the difference between a customer acquisition mindset and a customer support mindset.
Thank you.
It's not how do I acquire more customers, it's how do I support the humans that need my help.
Yep.
And that mentality, not only does it obviously help the people that walk through our front doors, but it helps business owners. Because my value is now 1.5 to 2 times more than if I see you as just the next car that rolls through my door. But you're the human who I can solve your problem. And that problem is worth a certain value. And how do we both arrive at understanding what that value is, that you walk away with your problem solved, and I walk away being recognized for supporting you?
There's basic principles to business. There really is. I don't care where you're at in the world. But the fact is, off of those, let's say there's 4 basic principles. Off of those, there's the channels around those that shift as technology changes and as human interaction changes. And so if you're not taking and engaging and constantly making yourself better and learning, you're not going to be in that number 1 spot. You're not going to be in the pole position. You've got to constantly take and feed and update this computer that's your mind. And you've got to involve, finally, technology is coming in. Look at the aspects within, I'll talk about the detailing industry, our lighting, our coatings. I mean, I'm using now, we just introduced lasers to where we are printing out on the side of a car lasers when we measure the paint for thickness. We're using lasers. We're using these amazing machines that are out there. We're using amazing products with nanotechnology from other industries. But yet you're on a pen and paper for your freaking management of your company?
So where do you think the gap, I know there's a gap, why do you think there's such a gap between a focus on physical skill and business skill? Is that a lack of education being served? Is it a lack of desire to embrace both sides? There's certainly a gap in the industry.
There is, and no, you know what? The gap is the people. It's going to be up to the individual. So many people talk about events like, or they naysay coming to these events. Is a lot of people in the industry, they don't put themselves in front and held accountable to other people. So I think that it's got to be the individual that takes ownership of, listen, I'm doing things on the old-fashioned way. I'm not managing a business. Really, you're a hobbyist. Is that if the back end's not running right, the front end's not running right. If all you are is a technician, eventually all you're going to have is a job. I hate to say it.
So you were 18 and 19, sold a company for $96,000.
Yeah.
Today, you're involved in what seems like 142 endeavors.
Right.
What happens in between? How do you get there?
It's very careful planning. Chris will tell you I'm really into mind mapping. I mind map my life out pretty much every day. I'm really into mentors. I've had both paid and non-paid mentors. I got some amazing mentors. I mean, just unbelievable. The people around you, of who I surround myself with. Also making sure my family understands my mission. But the biggest thing is technicians, the difference between an entrepreneur and a technician. A technician is worried about, A, what I did great, the last car I did that was over the top, that beat everybody, but I haven't done one since. B, the next thing that they're worried about is just survival, and that takes you off your game plan. If you're just trying to survive, it takes you off your game plan. The other thing is that I've always looked at my finances. Is that I know where I'm weak, where I'm strong, how much I've got, where it is, where it's located, where it's going. And so you've got to have that entrepreneur mentality instead of a technician mentality. Back to why is the separation? It's individual ownership. people have got to take and own it on themselves. You're doing a video right now. Your company's investing in anybody that's watching this. The company invested in it. This isn't free. This didn't just happen. There's a lot of different software companies out there. You could just go out and selfishly sell, but you're trying to take and educate.
One thing you mentioned that I think is important is mentorship. And I think it's, you have taken an active stance, and you've done it even years ago with Mike Phillips to go find people to help. Mm-hmm. How would you tell a detailer who's a year in, 2 years in Louisiana,
right?
How does he go find that mentor to help him figure out what he doesn't know? Which, let's face it, none of us know everything. It's impossible.
Right. Yeah.
What are the steps that somebody like that takes?
I think I'll do a little plug. There's a lot of the IDA, International Detailer Association, is that I won't say every single member's above ground. They've done it the right way, but they're trying to. If they're not there, the other thing is that there's those of us within that organization that it's really the forefathers of modern day detailing, that have laid it down, and those forefathers put on classes every month. And if you look at the cost of membership, you should be able to pay for the membership for the next 10 years off the first podcast or webcast that you attend. Wow. I mean, it really is, because you've got some, Mike Phillips, Jason Rose, Bob Phillips. I mean, I can just keep going down through. Chris and I get involved. I can't even name Chris West. It goes on and on and on and on.
How do you, there seems to be, and this is not a rare mentality,
right?
But there's a short-term fear of the risk it takes to invest in a business that isn't yet returning what you'd like it to. And it could be because you're new, it could be because you've got so much to learn. But we talk to a lot of people when we say, are you investing in things like software or marketing? And they say, I can't spend $65 a month.
Right.
And we say, that 65 is intended to return 50 times. But I understand that concern. How do you address that early on?
Anybody, if they can't afford the 60, and I've been there, and I'm not ragging on you, you're probably not ready to be full-time entrepreneur. You probably need to go get a part-time job, because if you can't afford $65, that means you're probably not paying your taxes. It probably means you don't have insurance. Mm-hmm. There's probably a lot of other things. And a lot of people are going, man, you're kind of being a jerk. No, I've been around. I know the habits, of people like that. And the thing is, and you know what, the fake it until you make it days. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that you can't do it, because I'd be a hypocrite if I did, because back 20-something years ago, I did. And so anybody that's watching is that, you know what, listen to the people that are talking to you. We've been down that road. And the only thing I want is people to be successful and happy. I don't want them to overwork. I don't want them to waste time. For the last 30-something years, I've done search and rescue, both the military and civilian. I'm on a mountain rescue team back where I live. I've been with people when they take their last breath. And I have never yet been with a stranger that's died in my presence that talked about their business or money.
Of course. So what leads you to Air Force One?
Wow. Okay, this comes back to this. Okay. Is 2001, 9/11 happens. We just started a transportation company, and we're tied in with a company out of New York. And we kind of funded our whole company with the ideals that they sent a lot of people into it. We're in a really nice area, Sun Valley, Idaho, is where we had our shops. And we started that company with the ideal that, hey, these guys are going to start using us for transportation, executive protection, all this, right? So we put a buttload of detailing money into that business. 9/11 happens. None of that happens. So here's this huge Wall Street guy that realizes that he just hears through the grapevine that this little company had taken and put it all out there to help support not just them, but their endeavors. And they had a huge investment in that area of events they held year round. So they graciously sent us a check and prepaid for services going into 2002. And it really saved us, that business. Our detailing was fine. But that business, we were like, ooh, is this going to survive? One of the things that came from that is right before Christmas of 2002, we pick up an individual, Joe Clark. Name didn't mean anything to me at that time. We pick him up off his private jet. And when he gets out, he piloted the jet. Well, I'm a pilot, so that interests me because, I mean, I can't fly a jet. I can barely fly a Cessna, you know, more or less that. Long story short, we develop a friendship. He learns that we not only own the transportation company, we own a detailing company. So we start working on his cars. He's got some really nice rides. Slowly works us in as the trust comes in. He finds out my background in aviation, and we start going into his planes. And turns out, you know how wings turn up on the end now? They're called winglets. He's the inventor of winglets.
Good for him.
He sits on the board of directors for Boeing, and he sits on the board of directors for the Museum of Flight up in Seattle.
It's quite the connection.
2002, Thanksgiving of 2002, he calls us and says, hey, you want to detail Air Force One? And it was Kennedy, and it was the very first jet, 707. And we went up. Boeing had tried everything to save it. They couldn't. They're going to repaint it. They're going to cover up this valuable, beautiful aluminum with all the history of, you know, of having Eisenhower and Kennedy and Johnson and Nixon and even a little tail end towards Reagan, you know, with this plane. And they're going to cover up all that beauty. And we went in, and it's still to this day, now it's preservation. We work on that same airplane to the day. We've worked on several of the presidential aircraft, but that one's got a special meaning because of the history on it. And it's only worth $300 million. It's kind of cheap plane, you know. But that led into it, that one relationship. And the key back to that is, if every time that we tracked everything that we did with Joe Clark, and I'd send him out, every single time we'd work on something, we were innovators of using software. And so every time that we'd finish a job, he would get an email notifying him it was done. Then he'd get an email telling him thank you. Then he'd get an email, most important one, invoice. Guess what it was? Software driven.
So this series is called Prescribing Growth. Obviously a huge passion of yours is training and coaching. I think the next generation of auto reconditioning professionals is really interesting to me, and how much they've grown up in a world that is more digital, that is more driven by always available communication. I think the things that rang true, and tell me if I'm right here, is finding the people around you that can point out the things that you're missing, because let's face it, we're all missing something. We can't have it all. There's a level of professionalism, there's a level of communication that I think is hard to do regardless of the industry, that sounds like you've prioritized since day one. And then it's the relationships.
It is. And the relationships is at the forefront. Is, you know what, all the technology, I love, man, one of those guys, you know, I'm addicted. My kids are just, Instagram to me is like heaven, because it's short, sweet, I can get on, get off. And Facebook, not so much anymore, because I kind of follow the trends with the younger people. Is I just don't have the time, and I don't like some of the BS that goes on there, right? And so I think that while I'm all trendy, I like, you know, I've adjusted well to technology. There's one thing that people are really missing, and it's just the handshake. It's looking face to face. It's talking to people. It's picking up the phone, not texting them. It's communications. It's that personal interaction. I think that's where the future is. I think moving forward right now in detailing is, I think there's some technologies that are going to really change things. Is that coatings are not going anywhere. It really has changed. As a matter of fact, it's going to make us more and more profitable. You know, we've got Detail Boss out of Scottsdale, Arizona, two brothers. They're doing an average of $150 to $250 an hour each. Go figure that out.
How are they getting that?
Efficiency and reputation and relationships. You know, relationships are key. And patience. Is that, we just did a podcast on that, patience. Is they knew, I told them when they came out, they said, how long, you know, until we're really on top? And I said, 7 to 10 years. And they went, what? And I said, 7 to 10 years. I said, listen, you talk to anybody, you know, that's a pro at what they do, the best in the industry at what they do. Master sergeant in the military, 7 to 10 years.
Overnight success is generally seen that way from the outside,
right,
but has sometimes decades of background before it. I think that goes back to that being willing to invest early on, knowing that it might take time and patience to reach the ultimate level of success, but the people who invest early and build upon that are the ones who are successful today.
Listen, Jim Gogan, a good friend of mine, we were talking a couple weeks ago, and I told him that theory, and he goes, Rennie, here's what I'm going to argue. We're the exact same age. And he says, my goal is now, is I dig 7 to 10 years. He says, let's clip that down to 5. Let's make it our intent for the people that are willing to engage, willing to listen, willing to be mentored, willing to run it like a business. Let's cut that down to 5 to 7 years. over the next decade. And so, that's our goal. I'm not telling you can't make a living. I'm just telling you can't get it to the sweet spot. The sweet spot is I'm sorry, I love my wife, got a gorgeous wife, I got gorgeous kids, I live in a gorgeous area, I serve in the military part-time, I do search and rescue, I've got a lot of different things I like to volunteer, I've got 4 amazing dogs, I've got good friends. There's a whole back life. The working life is just what supports that side of it. I want to spend as little time with as much reward as I can. That's where managing your business from a software perspective is going to allow you. It's one of the tricks that's going to take and allow you to take and work less, make more.
Absolutely. Well, Rennie, we appreciate you joining us. First episode.
Thanks, man. That was great.